Good evening. Y'all tired? Okay. I know you didn't come out on this cold night to sound that boring, so I'm going to ask again. Good evening. So first, I want to thank once again Richard, Rob, and the entire board of the DC Public Library Foundation, Ramunda Young, who's out there selling books, Ramunda from Mahogany Books, as you know. She's the one who actually texted me to set up the conversation with the DC Library, and Rob is absolutely right. I didn't need to hear much at all before I said yes, when, and how. I also want to thank the Pulitzer Center and the wonderful staff of the DC Public Library, but I especially want to thank Ryan Williams and Linnea Hegarty. You all are in for such an amazing night, and it does my heart so good in these dark times to see this room so full of you all. But none of this is possible without the hard work of the staff, and Ryan and Linnea have truly been visionaries. They've worked so hard, and they've just been tremendous partners. Anyone who knows me at all knows how much I believe in public libraries. I serve on the board of the Brooklyn Public Library, and I just truly, we have to support these amazing democratic spaces, so please continue to support and use your library. It takes a lot of courage in this time to host an exhibit like this, and so we have to acknowledge that courage that it takes to talk about 1619 right now. Or as we say, I remember when they said, when Ryan told me that not only did they want to host the 1619 exhibition, but they wanted to begin the year of the sesquicentennial with 1619. And I said in the parlance of my hometown, damn, y'all are gully, because that's what we say. So I also want to thank all the educators and the students who contributed such profound and beautiful work, and I hope you all will go out there and see the work that they produced. Most of these students are DC public school students, and so I'm a strong public school supporter, and it shows all the hard work of the educators who work every day to educate our students. No shade on the non-public school students, but my heart is with the public schools. I also want to just thank my collaborators on the 1619 project who are here. Caitlin Roper. Where you at, Caitlin? Are you in here? Okay, Caitlin Roper, Elena Silverman, and then Jake Silverstein. From the moment I pitched the project, they are the ones who worked and helped to shape it into everything that it is. I want to, before I get into kind of my formal remarks, I want to let people know that the exhibit is open now, and we offer, throughout the night, I've curated, along with the DC Public Library staff, what I hope is going to be a very intriguing, fulfilling, educational, and also fun evening. When you go throughout the evening, you're going to see that it's filled with art and history. You're going to be able to meet the artists all on the main stage, but also interact with them out on the floor where you can view their amazing works. And then you're going to take part after you leave this room in provocative 15-minute lightning talks all throughout the library tonight. And then you'll join us later with Jasmine Mans. Now, she ate, okay? Can we give it up one more time for Jasmine? I actually met Jasmine 7 years ago at a 1619 project event in Newark Public Schools, which was one of the first school districts to adopt the 1619 project. I saw her perform, and I was like, we're going to be together for life. And every time I have a 1619 project event, I always ask Jasmine to come and perform, and she always says yes. So thank you, Jasmine. So the last thing I want to say is please use your guidebooks. They are going to tell you where you need to go and allow you to really choose your own adventure tonight. And then my final thank you before I get into my formal remarks is I want to thank all of our collective ancestors whose struggle and fierce determination that we would be born into freedom is why we're all here today. So if you've ever seen me speak, I don't typically read my remarks. But honestly, I'm so angry right now that I was afraid that if I spoke off the cuff, I might get fired. So I am actually going to read my remarks. They're still angry, but it's a controlled rage, okay? So the idea of America. It was in spring of 2019, and I was in the throes of creating the 1619 Project when my daughter, who at that time was only 8 years old, came home from school and immediately sought me out in the basement where I was holed up writing. She slung her backpack on the floor at my feet and placed her hands on her hips, and she said, "George Washington had slaves?" She half asked, half declared, her face etched with both surprise and indignation. Now, if there's any writers in here, you know we don't like to be interrupted. I'm in the hole in the basement for a reason. So I'm like, yeah, of course they did. You didn't know that? And I'm trying to get back to my work. But she wasn't ready to go, and she asked, how didn't I know that? And so I started feeling my own creeping shame as I realized that my child, born into a household where we discuss race literally every single day, where books on slavery and racism and Jim Crow cram our bookshelves, where I gave her her first book on slavery at the age of 3. And yet, she too had been indoctrinated by the society outside of the walls of my home into this myth of America. She wanted to know how. How could George Washington have owned slaves? She implored, he was the first president. We were taught he's a great man. How could he be great if he owned people? And in that moment, I watched something in her as a Black girl in America come unmoored. And an understanding began to take shape that the we, the people that she had been talking about, did not include her. That story of America did not belong to us. And then she began to ask me about the other heroes of the American story. What about Thomas Jefferson, she asked. Well, yes, and wait, there's more. Not only did he enslave people, I told her, but he enslaved his own children. And so while writing my essay on democracy for the 1619 Project, I found myself engaged with this conversation with my child and trying to explain the grave hypocrisy of a nation founded in 1776, allegedly on ideals of freedom, and how this nation could allow enslavement of 1/5 of its population. And my mind flicked back to my own childhood and my own indoctrination into American mythology, that through the lies and omission transformed a group of elite slaveholders into demigods who led the divine founding of what we were told was the greatest and freest nation in the history of the world. No wonder they couldn't talk about us, because we're very inconvenient to that narrative. And I remembered my own struggle to understand what I, as a Black child, as a descendant of a people who were owned by those great men, and who would not know freedom for a full century after they fought for theirs. What was I to make of that? And through that questioning, I myself had learned early and painful lessons. Chief amongst them was that in order to maintain peace, in order to be part of the acceptable and glorious narrative of America, the story of my ancestors had to be minimized and erased. I learned that the cost of national unity was to embrace a collective lie. And so we gather here today in this nation's capital, built on the site of former slave plantations, located here as a compromise to enslavers, that our democracy is struggling to survive even as we commemorate the 250th anniversary of its birth, because lies are always built of fragile architecture. The 1619 Project sought to strengthen that architecture by beginning with a provocative question. What would it mean to think of our origins, not as the year 1776 with these ideals of liberty, but in 1619 with the practice of slavery? And how might that understanding help us to understand the country as it was so that we could try to build the country that we want? At its essence, the 1619 Project argues that we all have been taught the history of a country that has never existed, and that a more honest accounting was necessary, not to tear our country apart, as critics have argued, but under the belief that unless we tell the truth about ourselves, we will never overcome the grave inequalities and that multiracial democracy, which in fact is only 60 years old, may not survive. This year, as we commemorate the sesquicentennial of the Declaration of Independence, our nation is tearing itself apart at its seams. We are bearing the bitter fruit of the rot at our root. A few weeks ago, it was announced that to mark the nation's founding, instead of issuing commemorative coins of Frederick Douglass and Ruby Bridges and women's suffrage, that the Trump administration would instead issue coins featuring only white founders and a pair of white pilgrims. Many people were outraged that they did not want to honor the ways our country has worked to perfect our founding ideals of equality. But you know, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that while I understood that anger, it was sort of misplaced, because that anger was also perpetuating the dangerous myth that the 1619 Project, that this exhibit tonight seeks to dismantle. Trump's erasure of an acknowledgement of civil and women's rights in celebration of our founding is not actually radical. It's in reality an accurate tribute to our founding and founders and the nation our founders put forth. That's because the nation constituted in 1776 that these coins commemorate was built from one of the world's few true slave societies, and it was founded and run by slave holders. The nation constituted in 1776 would maintain the system of slavery longer than almost any nation in the world. At the Civil War, every single nation in our hemisphere had abolished slavery, except for Cuba, Brazil, and the nation founded on inalienable rights. And at the Civil War, this great force for liberty was home to the largest population of enslaved people on the planet. This nation's founders did not believe in equality for Black people or for women or for anyone besides other white men. So tonight, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That America that is represented here in this room is not a representation of our founders' vision. It is a rejection of it. The people in this room gathered here are not the heirs to the signers of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution that treated many of us as property. We are, in fact, as historian Kermit Roosevelt argues, the heirs of the enslaved people and the abolitionists who read into the Declaration a universal equality that our founders did not intend for us. So as we gather here tonight, Black histories are being purged from textbooks and museums in the public sphere. We are undergoing the largest assault on civil rights in a century, and a paramilitary force is doing battle with our fellow citizens in streets across American cities. We gather here tonight in a nation crumbling under its myth of its own exceptionalism. And in the face of that, we must determine to tell the truth, even if it costs us, to engage together in freedom dreaming and collective acts of remembering as resistance. For we are the keepers of our histories and our ancestral ways of knowing of the people who read great words that were not meant for them. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they read those words and they know those words were not meant for them, but they determined to do whatever they must to make them true. I close tonight with the words of one of our most cherished ancestors, poet Langston Hughes, a descendant of enslaved people like myself, one whom I've been turning to for comfort since I was in high school. And he said, "Let America be America again. Let it be the dream that it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me." Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain from those who live like leeches on the people's lives. We must take back our land again. America. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Thank you. Thank you.